My name is Karen Cuttill, and I'm a professional counselor at Dallas College in Dallas, Texas. Today, we're going to be talking about finishing the race, how to have time and energy for civic engagement. Today's learning objectives will be, hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to identify at least 3 focus areas of the Sustainable Development Goal number 3. You'll be able to identify at least 2 action steps to lower stress and be able to identify 1 way to help manage time. And finally, to be able to name 2 areas of health that can be impacted by chronic stress. So I live and work in number 3, SDG number 3, which is good health and well-being. And of course, as you most likely know, it's one of the 17 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. Goal number 3 is by 2030, we hope to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable diseases through prevention and treatment and promote mental health and well-being. And as a licensed counselor, of course, mental health and well-being is exactly my ball court, right? Okay. One of the targets of emphasis is on non-communicable diseases, mental health, environmental risks, and as a special note, I do want to touch on COVID-19 pandemic, because even though we are emphasizing non-communicable diseases, COVID-19 has been such a global impact, and that we have had to shift a little bit and kind of pick up as part of some of our goals, how do we help with the pandemic? But when you look at mental health and well-being, the pandemic has left so many people with depression and anxiety. The suicide rate has gone up. Domestic violence has gone up. And October, which I'm actually recording this now, is Domestic Violence Month in the United States. And but all of these things, we have seen an increase in all of these mental health or mental well-being concerns. And it just takes a note that right now everyone's focus has to shift a little bit until we get beyond this pandemic, because it will affect and impact all of the 17 goals, as well as many other areas of everyone's life. So that target 3.4, when you look at it, it's kind of like a pie. It's like a 3-way pie. You have the physical piece, and you have the mental piece, and you have the environmental piece. And we want to start with the physical piece. So outside of COVID-19, which I hopefully I encapsulated that in just a little bit, so that we can just put that little helmet on, or that little hat on that says, oh, we do have to kind of keep that as a way that we have to filter everything right now. But under normal times, our non-communicable diseases are diseases like cardiovascular disease. Yeah, you can't catch a heart attack. Someone having one may give you one, but it's not contagious, right? Cancer, as scary as cancers are, they're not contagious. Chronic respiratory diseases, not contagious. You can't catch asthma someone. You really can't catch those respiratory problems like, allergies and that sort of thing. You're not going to catch those from somewhere else. Now, sometimes viral pneumonia is caused by viruses. A virus you might catch, like you might catch COVID, and then as one of the complications, have a respiratory issue. But basically, chronic respiratory diseases are, the disease itself is not contagious. And the last one that's on this list is kind of a focus is diabetes. And a lot of people, I hope, are aware that we are at an epidemic level in the United States of type 2 diabetes. There's a lot of reasons for that, but never before have we had epidemic levels of children with type 2 diabetes. Usually, historically, the only diabetes we see in children is type 1 or juvenile diabetes, and that's where the body is just not producing insulin, period, and that's they become insulin dependent, and it's pretty critical, and it's normally lifelong at this point. But type 2 diabetes is not the same, and it's something that our lifestyles, our eating habits, our exercise habits, those things, they're the ones that impact our well-being, to the point that if we're gaining weight, and a lot of weight, we stress our bodies to the point that we may develop type 2 diabetes. And that's something that once you have it, you actually have it forever. Now, you may get it under control and may not have a lot of symptoms. You may not be insulin dependent, but once you have that disease, it never goes away. And I don't think a lot of people recognize that, because if you catch it and and mitigate for it on the very beginning, you can live pretty happily and healthily, even though you've had it before, because you can control a lot of that in its progression over your life. The probability of dying from any of these four main non-communicable diseases that we just talked about is between the ages in 2016. The stat is a little bit old, but I think that the stats are pretty well close. Between the ages of 30 and 70, your probability of dying was 18% in 2016. I would imagine maybe it lowered a little bit before COVID, but I would suspect that since we've been highly stressed over COVID, and that now that you have probably even a higher percent chances of dying, at least from diabetes or cardiovascular diseases through COVID as a if you have, if you're diabetic, you're going to be more susceptible to COVID and having serious COVID. And at the same time, that once you get COVID, oftentimes people develop these types of respiratory or diabetes. Some of these things come second. So I think when you combine those two together, you have a higher risk of death at this point in time. So when we look at that, the health portion, that's the physical portion, that where we come with that is we really want to begin to say, what can I do about this? So we're talking about, how do we finish the race? How do we make ourselves sustainable to finish the race? And at that point, we need to figure out our own sustainability, because if we don't make it, then we don't get to impact all of the sustainability goals that we want to. Right? We don't get to do the environmental piece. We don't get the poverty piece. We don't get whatever it is that really lights our fire and what we really want to talk with. We don't get to do that if we're not around, or if we're not healthy enough to make a stand for what we want to believe in and to help other people understand the importance of these goals. So we want to step back and say, okay, how do I take care of myself? If I'm living in high stress, high chronic stress, okay, if I'm living in this kind of environment, if there's a lot of things going around, we know that the best way to take care of yourself and prevent contagious diseases is to take really good care of yourself, right? And so we want to look at these areas. So nutrition, exercise, self-care, which is kind of about the well-being part, better response to stress, which I just mentioned, and good sleep. All of these go together. And if we concentrate on each one of these, we can improve those areas, and we stand a better chance of being healthy, living longer, being happier, sense of well-being there, and having the energy to do the things that we want to, the civic engagement. So nutrition is really important. A lot of people know that if kids, if they don't get breakfast in the morning, they don't focus as well. They don't concentrate as well. So United States, we now have breakfast programs, right? They're national programs, and almost everybody is familiar with the lunch programs and the breakfast programs through the public school systems, and they work. That's a really great thing. They work, but nutrition works for everyone. If you don't have good, solid, stable nutrition, if you're not getting all of your vitamins, and if you're not eating well, then that's going to impact your ability to have energy, your ability to focus, and of course, your ability to stay well. And if you take that a step further, if you're eating, okay, maybe it's not that you have food instability, which is at its highest rate in a long time in the United States because of the pandemic. But if you have, you're not eating well, right? You got food and you got money to buy food, but instead of buying those fruits and vegetables and eating balanced, good, nutritious meals, you're eating junk food. You're eating lots of hamburgers and fried food and, carbohydrates, because carbs kind of make us feel good somehow. But, we're doing that. Well, we're not laying the ground of good nutrition, and we can't expect our bodies to have the energy and the focus ability that we need in times of stress. And in times where we're wanting to have lots of things going, we want to, be able to manage our time, because our work and those, particularly work. I'm going to start with work. Work should be what we do to support our life. Our life shouldn't necessarily be lived just to support our work. Now, some people, their work is their dream, and that might be a little bit different. But for most of us, we go to work so we can earn money, so we can come back home, and we can do those things that we enjoy and have the life we want to. And that kind of balance and that attitude on balance, to me, should be the first step when we're talking about stress. So nutrition comes back to nutrition. We want to be able to have a body that has the right nutrients in it so that we have the ability to step out and do the things we want to do. Even if it's going to work every day to bring home that bacon, or maybe in a vegetarian state, bring home that plant stem or plant leaf so that we can live nutritiously. So the second part, once we're feeding ourselves, then the next part is exercise. And we're going to talk about exercise again a little bit later on. But if you're eating, even if you're not eating totally healthy, that exercise burns calories, right? And so it can help balance that out if we're getting enough exercise. Unfortunately, we live in a very sedentary society, and we tend to sit at desks all day and not getting up and moving around. So anytime you can, take your breaks, walk. A lot of people have standing desks, walk, because when you get exercise, it acts like a producer of energy. The more you exercise, actually the more energy you get. Now, you may be tired right after you exercise, but that overall impact is going to give you more energy. And we'll talk a little bit more about exercise in a few minutes. Self-care is that part of well-being, and we really need to balance all these things that we do for ourselves, all the things that we do for other people, and our work. So we have all these commitments, right? We've got kids, we've got work, we've got spouses, we've got boyfriends, girlfriends, we've got cars that need, maintenance. We just have all of these things that we have to do. And usually when push comes to shove on time, the first thing we do is we give up what we do for ourselves, especially women. And that is something we need to focus on and change. If you were a Ferrari and you didn't have any gas, you wouldn't go anywhere. Even if you were brand new and still had your dealer's tags on, if no one puts gas in you, you're going to be basically useless, except to look at maybe, right? Or if someone leaves your battery on and it, the light's on and the battery runs down. I'm not sure that can happen in cars these days, but let's say it can happen. Well, you're not going to have the energy, not the power to get up and go. And the same thing is that we've got to take care of ourselves, because when we do our self-care, it gives us the energy to be able to help other people. All of this is a better response to stress. Okay, all of this goes together as part of that stress response. We'll pick up a couple of more attempts later on. And the last one is good sleep. And good sleep, sleep routines help that. And I know if you're really worried about everything else, then your sleep's probably going to be impacted. If you're sick, your sleep may be impacted. So there's a lot of things that may impact that good sleep, but there are also some tips on sleep hygiene that can help you, like set up a sleep ritual, just like you do with little kids, about an hour or so before your desired time to go to bed, right? Start turning lights down, start disengaging from your computer, disengaging from your TV, maybe put some quiet music on, read a book, do something that really begins to calm your brain and make it a ritual. Just like little kids, we give them their baths, we put their pajamas on, we read them a story, maybe we say prayers or whatever, give them that last drink of water, tuck them in bed, right? And eventually that sets your body up and your mind up to go, oh, that's right, it's time to go to bed. So we want to do that as adults for ourselves, and we want to keep a consistent wake-up time. To begin with, if you need to get up at 7 o'clock every morning, that's great. Do it 7 days a week. Don't go back to bed. After about 3 weeks or so, you can probably break off a little bit on the weekends, but still you will find eventually that you're waking up at that time, and you don't really need to go back to bed because you're going to bed early enough because you're tired, and it just works out over time. So mental well-being, and when we pull out that mental well-being part, we're talking about depression, anxiety, substance use and abuse, and suicide. Fatal thoughts, okay? When you're talking about stress and anxiety and depression, sometimes these are physical ailments, right? We consider them kind of emotional and kind of separated, but we're integrated. Our physical and emotional health are integrated. We're all one being, and one impacts the other. And the truth is that progress has been made in reducing the global suicide rate. It was 12.9 per 100,000 in 2000 and 10.6 per 100,000 in 2016. So the good news is that these SDGs, they work over time. And that's why I shared that with you. However, even with that, it still remains the second highest cause of death among people aged 15 to 29 globally, not just in the United States, but globally, while 79% of suicides are found in low and middle income countries in 2016. Those were getting better. COVID actually reset a lot of that. Our suicide rate went up during COVID, especially during the lockdowns and the unemployment, all those things that have happened because of this pandemic. Our suicide rate has gone up. I think it will self-adjust later, but we really need to understand that suicide is a non-communicable, fatal part of a non-communicable disease. We got to keep that mental well-being an important part of what we do. And I want to kind of stop here, and I said we'd get back to stress, but I want to emphasize how much stigma impacts mental health. I think stigma is our number one battlefront, because stigma keeps people from accessing, it keeps people from telling someone that they really don't want to live anymore. It keeps people from accessing counseling. It keeps people afraid to just talk. And unfortunately, when we're talking about anxiety and depression, talk therapy still does a lot to have someone really good listener listen to you and help you kind of sort things out, not do things for you, but kind of help sort them out as professionals can. It makes a difference in people's lives. It saves lives, because chronic stress can lead to lots of anxiety. And just think back to last year. Most of us had some really anxious times during the beginning of COVID or through COVID. And that chronic stress, like COVID, leads us a lot to anxiety. And if we don't treat the anxiety, if we're not able to resolve that anxiety over time, we have all those chemicals in our body, and the anxiety will lead, that chronic stress will lead to anxiety. Untreated anxiety leads to depression. And there is a percentage of time, just like any other non-communicable disease, there's a point in time when depression becomes fatal. Not for everybody, but it should never be fatal for anybody. And so that's our goal with the Sustainable Development Goals. We want to really, really stop that. This slide just basically says, it gives you the reference about chronic stress and how low-grade stressors can have a greater impact on health and well-being than acute or extreme events that occur at infrequent intervals. Think of hurricane, right? Hurricane comes in, it's totally catastrophic, but you survive, right? And eventually you put yourself in, you may be traumatized, you may have some effect that you still deal with for a while, but that stress comes in, it gets really high, and then it resolves because the hurricane's gone and you're still living. That's true with most things like that, right? We can, short-term stress, we do really good. We're designed to rev up, fight it, or, deal with it or not deal with it, and, go away. And then we kind of get back to our homeostasis level. But chronic stress is different. If you have chronic stress and you have little opportunity for recovery, this can lead to an unhealthy levels of psychological and physiological reaction. Stress hormones are not good for a long period of time. I mean, think about it. How does your body react to stress? Is it like the zebra? Do your stripes fall off? And if you stop and think, you probably can say, well, when I start to get stressed, blank happens. So when I start to get stressed, I get kind of resentful and very irritable. And so that's just my signs. When I can see that that's happening, I know it's my trigger, right? That's my flag. Step back and see how I'm handling my stress, what I need to do to manage it better. And think about what kind of stress can you name, right? Well, we've talked about pandemics and hurricanes and tornadoes and maybe job stress. Some people go through major job reorganizations. And if you're part of Dallas College, that's probably been stressful for you. It's been stressful for most of us here. But there's a lot of things that impact us. And normally we can say, oh, that was really stressful. I don't want to do that again. Or that was really hard to cope with. We know these negative stressors, right? But we also have positive stress. Two of the best examples are having a baby. Most of the time that's a good event, right? And I know sometimes we don't want people to be pregnant at certain ages or whatever, but usually having a baby is considered a good thing, right? Getting married is considered a good thing. Both of those are really high stress things because there's so much change. And weddings, bridezilla, weddings are positive, but they're really high stress. So stress is stress. It really doesn't matter if it's, our reaction's the same. It doesn't really matter if we think it's positive or negative. Negative might be a little bit, but our body actually has the same reactions to stress. We have what's called a sympathetic fight or flight, and that's where we're designed. We are actually designed to look at something that we think is a threat and to react to it. And so normally with fight or flight, saber-toothed tiger, long time ago, lived in a cave. You look at the saber-toothed tiger and you think, if I fight that saber-toothed tiger and I win, bring lunch home for everybody. And, my village, my community, they're rah, rah, rah because I've, subdued the saber-toothed tiger and I bring it home and everybody's got food to eat. However, if I engage that saber-toothed tiger and it wins, I'm lunch. So you have to sit and decide in these threatful situations, do I engage the tiger or do I run like crazy in the opposite direction? Well, our bodies are designed to do that. So when we're stressed with a threat, when our mind perceives a threat, doesn't have to be a real threat. It can just be a perceived threat, right? We have a physical reaction. Our heart starts pumping, our breathing gets shallow. We start producing cortisol and adrenaline, norepinephrine, all these stress hormones that you hear about, where our body starts producing them like crazy. And then we have physiological responses. But the heart starts pumping because it's wanting to get that adrenaline to all of the parts of the body, particularly the large muscles, your thigh muscles, your neck, back muscles, your arm muscles, because those are what you're going to use to either fight with or run like crazy in the other direction. So it makes sense. We have stress hormones so that we can move in the face of danger. We can defend ourselves in the face of danger. We can pick up cars off of our child or our husband or our girlfriend when they fall on them, right? We hear those unique things. That's all part of that sympathetic fight or flight. And basically, it's kind of uncontrollable. Your brain perceives that horrible threat, and suddenly you're empowered with lots of things to do things that you might not otherwise be able to do. So fight or flight is good. If it's too much hormone, though, if it's too much of these chemicals in our body, we become overwhelmed. And overwhelmed usually leads to freeze, or it leads to indecision. It leads to a lot of things. And that kind of stress is really toxic for us. So chronic stress is the same life-saving responses in your body can suppress immune, digestive, sleep, and reproductive systems. And they actually may cause them to stop working normally. A lot of women with their monthly cycles, if they get really, really stressed, their cycle gets off. And that's a really good example. It's just what happens when we're stressed. Get too stressed too long time. People say, oh, so much stress, they get heart attacks, right? Well, interesting thing about heart attacks is that people, they really believe you're having a heart attack and you're hurting that bad and it's that much anxiety. You're probably going to take yourself to an ER or call an ambulance, or someone else is going to take you to the ER, right? And that's what you should do if you have signs of a heart attack. I don't care if there's signs of heart attack, you need to get medical help. But about 90% of the time, those people that show up with those symptoms in emergency rooms, 90%, give or take, those symptoms are symptoms of stress. They're panic attacks. And that is just another sign, another flag that says we've really got to learn to control this chronic stress better so that our energy goes to what we want it to and not stopping us from doing what we can do, or scaring the heck out of us thinking we're having a heart attack when really we're just having panic symbols. So now over time, continued strain on your body from routine stress may contribute to serious health problems such as heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and other illnesses, as well as mental disorders like depression and anxiety. It's just, it's stress, but people say, oh, it's just stress, but there's things we can do for stress. We think, well, what can I do? It's there. I can't really control the reorg in my work, or I can't control fill in the blank, right? I can't control it. Sometimes I can't control how my kids behave, or there's just so much in our world that we don't have control over. And a lot of that can be stressful, but what can we do? Well, there are a lot of things we can do. I mean, it's just kind of chaos, but how often does our life kind of resemble this? We've got so many things we're juggling, so many plates on a stick or so many things cooking on a stove that it becomes really hard. Something starts slipping. It happens in my life too, and I'm pretty darn sure it happens in everybody's life if we get to that part that we've got too much going on. When we are in chronic stress to the point that we get overwhelmed and we kind of just get to that place that it's hard to take action at, or we're overwhelmed. Eventually, if we stay there too long, we convince ourselves that we're helpless in it. And that kind of learned helplessness, now that there's a lot psychologically to that, but just briefly, that kind of belief that we're helpless, or that we learn that we're helpless in situations, those lead to depression. And again, depression can lead to fatalist. It can lead to suicide, a choice to end your life by killing yourself or someone else having that choice. Very important that that we remember that having too much on our plate can really lead us to chronic stress. Now, I want to talk about all those things that we do. And we were talking about part of our title here is how do we find time and the energy, right? And so I'm talking a lot about energy, but I want to stop and I want to point out something. There's only so much that your brain can do. Literally, it can only do so much. Theoretically, the brain can only focus on one thing at a time. Just one thing. Now, a lot of people go, oh, I multitask, I can do all these things. Well, except for that piece of brain in the very kind of base of your skull and that's the part of the brain, it does not think. I'm going to act like it does, but it doesn't think. So normally it just keeps you breathing. It notices that, you're hungry, you're thirsty or whatever, right? So it's just going through these little things and you're, keeps you ticking along the way. But the cognitive part is the part that we're thinking about when we need focus, right? We need to be able to focus on what we're doing and go from there. The problem is in our culture, we celebrate multitasking. Well, the truth is there is no multitasking. There is switch tasking, but there is no multitasking. Your brain can only concentrate on one thing at a time. So you can look at this thing, and then you can look at that thing. And so maybe you're switching back and forth, but the problem is when we start switching back and forth, the brain's not very good at that, doing that quickly, and we lose time because there's that adjustment period, and we lose quality. So that increases the need to redo things or to recheck things. So we lose a lot of time when we multitask. They did a research, and in the research they asked CEOs. They said, "Hey, we want you to do this. We want to look at you, and we want you to try something with your emails." And they were like, "What?" And they said, "We want you to take your emails and your phone and only check messages maybe twice a day, maybe at the very beginning of the day to see what came through late, or maybe around lunchtime, kind of midday, and then again at the end of the day." Well, a lot of the CEOs said, "No way. If I do that, my business will collapse. There's no way my business I have to be available all the time." Some other more out of the box thinking CEOs thought, "I'll try it. Why not?" I don't know. Maybe they were giving him a lot of money. I don't know. I don't know what this incentive was to get into the study, but some of the CEOs did that, and it was really amazing. It was difficult. They found it difficult to do. But eventually what they came up with, when asked at the end of the study, the CEO said, "I will never check email all day long again. I will never have access to my phone all day. I may have access to it, but they're never going to answer it all day long." Because the two things they found out was, number one, they got more done and better quality done. And all those people, like their customers, they thought would be upset with them because they didn't get them immediately, they understood. And actually, they knew, when they got back to him, you had an answer to the problem. It wasn't just, "Okay, I'll go figure it out and then get back to you," right? You had an answer when you got back. They said, actually, their businesses did better when they did that. And what really surprised them is that all the people they hired underneath them, they rose up to the occasion. So when there was an emergency or crisis, they handled it. And that's really good for a CEO, right? It's a sign of success when you can walk away from it and it handles itself. So that's one thing we want to think about, simplifying your life. Just do one thing at a time. Mindfulness, concentrate on the one thing. Don't be looking and scanning all the time and thinking. Just reduce multitasking because you're going to increase your quality and your quantity. The other thing that's becoming, our younger generations in the workforce, they've got this down pretty good. Older people might not catch this, but it's time affluence versus material affluence. You only got so much time. You only got so much money. Yeah, right, but you only got so much time. And how do you want to spend your time? Start thinking about how do you really want to spend your time? That was going to take us back. Is your work your life? So that everything outside your work supports that job? Or is your job and work, your career, about sustaining you, helping you have more energy, getting you to do the things that you enjoy, the things you want to do with your family, the way you want to live your life, right? So there's a balance there. And I understand sometimes you got to take work home. I do too. I don't like to, but I do. But that should be an unusual situation, not an everyday event to get through the day. Too much stress is not good for us. When we get really stressed, like in those panic situations, our heart starts pumping very fast. If your heart's pumping fast, heart and lung work in tandem. Then if your heart's pumping fast, your breathing is going to get shallow. Okay. When your breathing gets shallow, you don't get as much oxygen, and that little bitty part of your brain that keeps you alive is going to think, oh my gosh, there's a drop in oxygen, I'm going to die, right? Because a few minutes later you're dead. No oxygen, death. And it's going to turn around and dump a whole bunch more adrenaline, cortisol, all those stress hormones. It's going to dump a bunch more in your system because it thinks you've got to fight something to stay alive. That's why we teach breathing. All right. When the heart's pumping fast, you breathe shallow. However, if you're breathing deeply, your heart calms down and you're getting more oxygen, less likely for your brain to freak out, and it helps relax. It helps dissipate some of that hormone and definitely helps protect you from getting an overabundance in your system. So breathe and relax. That's another thing you can do when it comes to stress. Just take a moment. 15 minutes of mindful breathing can reduce reaction to stress and improve mood. It's amazing. Just being able to allow yourself to focus on one thing at a time and not a zillion things, you're going to be less stressed. You're going to be a happy camper because you're going to get more done. It's going to look good, and you're going to have to recheck things later on. So just help yourself by focusing on one thing at a time, being mindful of the moment. It's really great. We only have the moment. We can look in the future. We can look over our shoulder in the past, but we live in the moment. And that doesn't mean, careless doing whatever you want to do. It's just being conscious of what's going on at the moment. The other thing that does that helps us with this is exercise. So it releases that stored chemistry in our muscles. I talked about that earlier, which relaxes you. You go all tensed up, you go get a massage. She or he works all those massages. You come out nice and relaxed. That's relaxed, right? Then you feel good, kind of happy. They tell you to drink water so you can flush all those stress hormones out, right? Exercise does a lot of things. It relaxes you. It helps you focus. It improves cardiovascular health. It reduces blood glucose, which fights type 2 diabetes. It reduces frustration, believe it or not. And if you reduce frustration, you bring your blood pressure down. Just saying. And not all high blood pressures do from frustration, but it does play a part. And it improves your cognitive processes. So I'm going to go this one quickly. I'm kind of running short on time, but I want to tell you there was a study done by Duke University on depression. And they took people with major depression and they separated them first in two groups. They had their control group, which everybody got cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Standard, gold standard in counseling. Everybody got that because you can't really not treat someone with major depression when you know they've got it, right? Because sometimes depression leads to suicide, right? So everybody gets that. So that's their baseline. But some people, that's all they got. Other people, they got, everybody got cognitive behavioral therapy. Some people got medication, and some people got exercise. All right, everybody got the same. They did it for about 4 months. When they came out, they did it with 156 patients. These are the things: psychiatric medication, and exercise, and then exercise alone. After 16 weeks, all groups improved about 60%. Yay, right? We're onto something here. And they figured that that medicine's going to help, right? Because that's what we're all about, pharmaceuticals in this country. There was no significant difference between the groups. That stunned them. So they said, well, there's no difference in these groups. Let's see what happens to recidivism. Let's see what happens to relapse. Because not only in substance abuse, but in mental health, we don't want people to get sick again. We don't want people to feel bad again. We want to have things that help them change their ways for life, right? Give them tools, help. So they did a 10-month follow-up. Relapse with medication, 38%. That was just about on target. That's exactly. And they thought, okay, well, that's good. Relapse with medication and exercise, they said, ooh, that's 31%. That says, that medication's a good part, exercise, whatever. They almost stopped there. Then someone said, well, wait a second, we had another group. How did that group? And they almost didn't do it, right? Look at it. However, the relapse with the exercise alone was 9%. That is mind-boggling. This research has been it's been repeated and they all get just about the same thing. Exercise alone is the number one way to fight anxiety, to fight stress, and to fight depression. Unfortunately, we don't have enough energy sometimes. But we get that energy from self-care, and I ran over that really quickly. But self-care isn't about being self-indulgent or self-focused, which in our culture, main culture here in the United States, we some of our other cultures too, that's taught, if you're not busy, if you're just looking out for yourself, that's a bad thing. But however, just like that Ferrari I spoke about, if you don't put gas in your tank, you're not going to be able to give out. You're not going to be able to focus well enough and to have the energy to do the things that you want to do, especially with those SDG goals that are in your favor, right? And those favorite ones. And I just passed over the last slide really quickly, but kindness actually is a superpower. Kindness can reduce pain. It increases dopamine, serotonin, and endogenous opioids. They're all released by kind behavior. Smiling, opening a door for someone. Doesn't have to be giving your whole life, life savings away or something. Just small acts of kindness. Do it a lot. See what happens. You'll feel good. It enhances the release of oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is something really interesting. We used to believe it only happened in childbirth. And that was because it makes the women to bond with the baby, right? And forget everything they've been through the last few hours. And, we will have more children then, right? It helps the species continue. And we figured that was the only time. Then we discovered it actually happens in sex too. So both of those are kind of reproductive, right? But then we discovered that when you're kind to people, you also produce oxytocin. That's interesting, right? It enhances both mental and physical health. Kindness reduces stress. But there's a really interesting thing about kindness and that oxytocin. So when you volunteer to clean up a creek or to help with a food pantry or volunteer to help other people, being kind like that, when you do it yourself, you get all those benefits I just named. When you do it with a partner, with someone it can be a friend, a spouse, a family member, when you do it with someone you team up, you release a lot of oxytocin. Just saying. There's a reason you grab a friend and go clean a waterway. I'm really about ecology and just, begin to really team up. When you team up with others, you'll have less stress, you'll feel better, you'll feel kind, you'll have oxytocin running in your system, and you're going to live happier, and probably longer in the long run. Plant a tree. Okay, trees are important. You can go to southernforest.org and learn a lot about what trees can do. Okay, they have a Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives, and you can just remember, Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. Search it, and you're going to come up with a area. You can click on a thing and it's going to tell you how trees benefit that area. We all know that green space promotes well-being. There's a reason why people, CEOs, they get the corner office, right, with the windows. There's a reason why important people get windows. It's good for you. I think there's a reason why people used to play golf in business, because you're outdoors and you're in green space. More and more research supports the fact that we need green space to be emotionally well. If you're in the hospital really, really sick, if you don't have any windows, you might get well. It might take you a while, but if you put a window, and it doesn't matter what that window sees, it doesn't have to see a tree out there, but just looking outside, an outside window, people recovered faster and quicker, and they stayed well longer. So get out, do that exercise, do that walk, be that mindful in nature. It's going to help you in the long run, help other people. Then we come to the environmental, and that's where I'm going to kind of pause here and wrap things up. That green space is important. The pregnant women that had no access to a lot of green space, those women had a higher infant mortality rate at birth. The women who had access to green space, lower mortality. It's interesting. ADHD in kids and adults, because it happens in adults too, it doesn't just go away. Get out, if they have breaks where they can get outside into nature, it has been documented. They have better focus, they have better behavior. So a long time ago, we sent kids outside to play at recess in elementary school. Then for a while, they stopped that. And you know what happened? Our rates of ADHD went up. Probably because they needed to get out there and exercise all of that stress hormone. Get rid of it, move those muscles, get rid of it. It happens in kids as well as adults. There's a lot of ways to find green space. Every parks department has a link, or you can call them. They'll tell you where their parks are. They'll tell you where their trails are. They'll tell you what you want to know. You can probably search them out online. Those parks and recs usually are free, right? A place like Dallas, we have tons and tons. They have miles and hundreds of miles of trails just in Dallas alone. Okay, Garland, Richardson, all the suburbs, they have their own parks departments. Check it out. See what green space you can find near you. Cultivate a little bit in your own house. Those trees, they clean our air. They breathe in all that carbon dioxide and they release oxygen, right? Their roots, they go down into the ground. Those roots help clean and filter what goes into our lakes and waters. Plant the tree. Love a tree, hug a tree. I don't care, but take care of your trees. Many people don't know that in Dallas, Texas has the largest urban hardwood forest in the nation. Most people don't know we have a forest. It's crazy. We have more than one. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to wish you the best. Please go volunteer. Do what you can. Take care of yourself. Then you can take care of others and do it one thing at a time, being mindful and happy. Be kind. And thank you so much for listening to me today. Have a wonderful summit.